Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Church Leadership Lab, where our goal is to help empower healthy churches. And so we love bringing conversations and connecting you with people who can help with that. And so we are looking forward to and excited for a conversation today with Dr. Ken Thomas. Ken serves as the president of Connect Ministries, which helps connect churches with their community and meet new people. He and Gabe Norris started Connect Ministries in 2006, and God has used this ministry to partner with over 1,000 churches and impact over 500,000 people with the message of Jesus. And so we're excited to unpack that. Before starting Connect Ministries, he served for over 10 years at Lifeway Christian Resources, where he helped start a children's camp called Century Kid. He also served as senior director of WinShape Camps, where camps grew, where under his leadership, the camps grew from 1,800 campers to 40,000 during his time leading there. Ken graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Education from the University of Georgia, a Master's of Divinity from Southwestern Theological Seminary, and a Doctorate of Education from the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. He's married to his wife, Norma, and they have 3 children, Nathan, Anna, and Blake. Ken, welcome to the show. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great, Scott. Thank you. And really excited to be a part of today's podcast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're excited to have you here. I'd love if we could just start, if you could give us a little bit of a history on Connect Ministries, Connect Camps. How did these come to be? What was this kind of born out of?
Well, Connect Ministries was birthed out of a real burden to help churches meet new people. My wife and I, back in 2003, were a part of helping start a church in the Nashville, Tennessee, actually Franklin, Tennessee area called Rolling Hills Community Church. We were lay people. It was a group of about 12 to 15 of us. And through that experience, we realized it is really hard for churches to meet new people. I mean, unchurched people. And I'm not necessarily referring to de-churched, although that's a hard group to reach. But I mean, just unchurched people, people who don't wake up in the morning thinking about Christ. On Sunday morning, they're not waking up saying, I think, should we go to church or should we not go to church? It's not on their radar.
Yeah.
And as being a part of just helping Rolling Hills get started, we realized this is a real struggle. My work at Lifeway continued to support that burden of just saying, it's hard. Churches are struggling. And so Connect Ministries was birthed as Gabe Norris and I and his wife, Allison, my wife, Norma, prayed about it over a couple years and just said, what would it look like if we gave as many years as the Lord allows us to live on this earth? What if we gave our ministry mission was to become an organization that would help churches meet unchurched people? Because what we realized and learned is that churches all over the world, and particularly where our focus right now is in the United States and Costa Rica, how do we help these churches meet new people? And that's what we've spent these now 17 years focused on. Wow. And we say that burden is not going away. We wake up every morning with that burden of knowing, hey, we're here to help churches, that we want to serve churches. We want to help them meet those new people because we believe the church has the message of hope that yep. that our world desperately needs. And so we're very fulfilled in trying our very best to help churches meet new people. So it was birthed out of that burden. Yeah. And so we still share that same burden today.
And so how, as you kind of had that burden looked at, and that's what we want to do, was it kind of some of your experience prior that you saw things like events, camps, like that was really a kind of sweet spot for making that connection and being something that you could kind of scale and repeat regardless of the context, right? Regardless of where the church was located, the community, all of that, that you could kind of take that and that could be a catalyst for that connection?
Right. Going back to the beginning days with Rolling Hills Community Church, one of the strategic plans early on was to, what if we did a community and a community event? Now that's nothing new. Churches do that all over the country. I mean, that's not a new concept. But as the pastor and I were sitting there, Jeff Simmons, we were sitting at lunch one day, and the church was a couple months from really officially launching. We thought, well, what are we going to do? And the idea came. Um, I'm not a basketball player, but the idea came, hey, let's do a big 3-on-3 basketball tournament. And then Jeff said, yes, let's make it the biggest one in Middle Tennessee. And I'm like, okay, great. And then he said, hey, how about you heading it up, Ken? And, and so,
Like, this was a
and
good idea before when I wasn't heading it up.
so like every good pastor, right? He said, why
Yeah.
don't you head it up? And
Yeah.
so what happened was the church launched in January of 2023. Well, in March of 2023, we did a huge 3-on-3 basketball tournament. It had several thousand people show up. Largest sport talk radio in Nashville came. Big grocery store chains, restaurants a part of it. It was a great day, and we called it the Cool Springs 3-on-3, and that was the shopping area where we did it in the parking lot of the Carmike Cinemas, and it was a wonderful day for a little small church. Looked up, and all of a sudden, there were several thousand people on the parking lot, and we didn't know them, and they didn't know us. And it occurred to me, what if we help churches across the country do this? Now, um, that was in 2003. Well, Connect didn't start till 2006. And we would continue to do it through our local church. And then other churches began reaching out, asking us if we could help them. And then we just kind of knew it was time to help more than just our local church, but help other churches do that. Now, we
Yeah.
don't do Connect 3-on-3 basketball tournaments anymore. Um, but we do, one of the things that we do is a ministry called Connect Camps. I know we'll probably talk about that. But what we were wanting to create was a relevant option for parents in communities across the country. And what we realized, Scott, is that um, parents everywhere are looking for something for their children to do every week of the summer.
Mm.
And if that's the case, and we've seen that that is the case, why not the church be the one to provide something that's remarkable in their community?
Yep.
And so, to your point of scalable, we found that that is a very scalable way and a very effective way for churches to meet unchurched people.
Yeah.
And by providing something that they're actually looking for, and do it in such a way that's remarkable, that they would be remarking about it throughout their community. And all of a sudden now the local church is the hero for providing something that even an unchurched person would say, that was the best week of my son or daughter's summer.
Yeah. Yeah, and that I think I'd love to dive into that a little bit, because I know summer is quickly here, and churches have either thought about camps, planned them, they're probably in the works, and I know sometimes maybe people would have maybe a different mindset, or not realize the potential, and so they kind of think of camps as well. Something for the kids to do. We should probably have an activity. But especially in what you just said, they have such a bigger value than that to both the church and the community. So how have you seen, and maybe kind of sharing some of stories, whatever you have, but how you've seen camps positively impact churches, but then also impact the communities? Kind of, what's the result after the basketball tournament, the camp, that experience that you all have seen in your experience?
Well, so much of what we've seen now over these 17 years, we've seen close to 300,000 campers in these 17 years. We never dreamed, Scott, that that's what would happen. We've seen somewhere between a little over 13,000 children accept Christ. Over close to 30,000 families have asked the local church to follow up with them as a result of participating in a Connect camp. And you say, well, how has the church kind of benefited beyond just it becoming a remarkable experience for the children? And one of those areas that we've seen is we've seen churches actually change their overall church strategy. We had
Wow.
one church tell us, we were a backyard church. We kind of did everything back behind our building, and nobody actually really knew what all we were doing. And now what we're trying to decide is how do we do things outside the walls of our church, where we
Mm.
actually can engage our community, where they can actually not just see our billboard or see our sign on the front, that they'll actually know somebody who goes to this church. And they
Yeah,
said from hosting Connect camps, we've gone to a church that moved everything to the front so
that's
that we
cool.
can engage our community. And they said, we're changing everything that we do based off of that. I tell you, one of the things that has happened over these years we never anticipated was the way God has used this particular camp to equip volunteers to serve year round in the local church.
Hmm.
Um, One of the greatest struggles we're hearing from churches right now, and you guys are probably hearing it as well, is man, they're struggling with volunteers.
Yep.
We can't get
Yep.
enough volunteers. And when we do, they're not always the ones we're looking for. We
Yeah.
need quality trained
Yeah.
volunteers, and that's a massive concern from a lot of the churches that we're working with. So one of the things that Connect does is we train and equip volunteers to serve in their local church, not just by going through a certain curriculum, but by actually getting your hands on it and actually doing it and
Hmm.
helping them create a love for the local church. And we're hearing from churches all the time about how this has been helpful. The struggle is real,
Yeah.
and there's no silver bullet to fix it. But one of the things that we've seen is that we've also seen um, that Connect Camps has helped with overall assimilation.
Okay.
Churches will do big events, and then after the big event, it's like, okay, where are the people? We worked 6 months to plan this big fall festival, had 5,000 people show up, and we
Yeah.
don't know of any single person that ever showed back up.
Yeah.
And so we work with our churches to help them create a really solid assimilation plan so that they can see these families more than just a week of camp. And so that's a real focus for us as we've done that. About 40% of the campers who attend camps in the summer are not connected to a church. And that's
Wow.
by the parents' admission. So we
Yeah.
actually think that number's higher.
Sure.
But we know that it's about 40%.
Yeah. Which, if you were to ask any church who's excited about reaching people, hey, if we could, if you could get in front of a group of people and have 40% of them not be a part of your church and engage with them, connect with them, pour into them, love on them. I mean, that's like, I don't know any that would say, nah, we're good.
Yeah.
That's the goal. So
Yeah. And to be able to be with those children for about 37 hours
yeah,
during the week of programming that Connect plans is think about how many events you have to do at a church to get 37 hours, and then to see these parents or grandparents, whoever the caregivers are, picking them up in the morning and picking them up or dropping them off in the morning and picking them up in the afternoon and having that FaceTime with them. And then we've created other ways for the churches to communicate with those
yeah,
caregivers, parents, grandparents, whoever it may be.
that's awesome. Well, you alluded to this a little bit in some of the assimilation, but what are some common mistakes that you see churches make as they're kind of planning for these camps, either in the planning, the execution? What are some things that, especially for the church leaders listening now, that you'd say, hey, be mindful of this because sometimes this gets forgotten, missed, and it can have a big impact?
Well, I think one of the top ones that we see is that some church leaders are not sure what their strategy is.
Hmm.
Okay, so the way that we know this is we get phone calls all the time or emails all the time. They'll say, hey, we're trying to decide Do we do an overnight camp where we take our children as a group away? And I'm a big proponent of overnight camps. I think that they're very healthy and very helpful in the discipleship of children. I do believe that, and youth. Um, they say, we're trying to decide, do we do an overnight camp? Hey, do we do VBS? Hey, do we do a day camp? Do we do
Yeah.
all three? What do we do? And our team will simply ask a question in return. Well, what's your strategy?
Hmm.
And not in every case, but in some cases, that there's not a real clear answer to that question. And so what I would say is, as you're trying to decide what it is that you're going to do this summer, or if you've already planned this summer, what are you going to be doing next summer? Um, Ask yourself the question, what is our strategy? How does it fit within the overall strategy of our church? Because there is an answer to the question, should we do VBS? Should we do overnight? Should we do all three? Should we do a day camp? There's an answer, but in our viewpoint is always related to your strategy.
That's
Hey, if
good.
you're looking to do discipleship with your children, you probably need to do an overnight camp.
Yeah.
In general rule of thumb is that unchurched families don't generally send their children or youth to an overnight camp to a place they've never been with people they don't know or trust.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, does evangelism happen at overnight camps? Yes, it does. Does it happen at the same degree as something that you do in your community, like a day camp or VBS? No, it just doesn't. Statistics prove that.
Yeah.
But you got to know, what is our mission? What is our strategy? The other thing that I noticed over these years is that a mistake that a church leader could make, if they're not careful, is to say, hey, we can do this on our own.
Hmm.
Now, in some cases, that's absolutely fact. They can. They've got all the resources. They got all the volunteers. They've got facilities. They've got everything they need. But in many cases, they could use another organization coming alongside of them to take off some of the pressure.
Yeah.
If your volunteers are already feeling burned out, why not partner with another organization who could help you relieve some of the pressure your volunteers are under, and let them not have to be worried about all the details, but let your volunteers be worried about building relationships.
Yeah.
And so I think if I was to kind of boil it down to two, I would say know your strategy and don't try to do it all by yourself.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that I think sometimes can be a barrier too, is churches look at maybe what another church does, another camp and experience they've had or whatever, and say, well, we can't do that, so we just shouldn't do it, or we can't do it, and that's one of those things that hopefully, as people are hearing this, kind of unlocks some gears turning to say maybe actually we can, because we can bring in some help and some people, and then we just have a small amount to focus on that we can do, and then we can let a team of experts and people who do this time and time again run with it. And I think that that's important. And the other piece, I've been a part of planning and executing a lot of camps in my time in ministry and stuff. I don't know if we've ever started with strategy. Like what are we trying to accomplish here, other than we should have a camp, we need a camp, let's plan a camp,
Well,
I think that's important.
I tell you what that does, Scott. It creates tremendous alignment.
Hmm.
Now, all of a sudden, your volunteers, they know what we're trying to accomplish. Hey, this is the reason why we're doing it. And what I've learned over these years is, man, if people know what it is we're trying to do and they can buy into that, they're more likely to volunteer, and they're more likely to serve with the whole heart. And then there's a measurement to know, did we accomplish what we set out to do?
Yep.
And when you do those things, they're much more willing to volunteer again. But when they get to an end of whatever it is that you're planning, and they just don't know, was this worth it? Did we
Yeah.
win? Did we lose? Did
Yeah.
we? Then they're like, I don't know if I'll do that again. That was, I don't know. But when
Yeah.
they can look back and you can celebrate it. Hey, this was our strategy. This is what we accomplished. Look what God did.
Yeah.
Good
100%.
gracious, man. Now that flywheel starts spinning, and momentum is created across your organization that is, you know, is contagious.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure that can bleed into other ministries then as
Mm-hmm.
well, is seeing that sort of mentality and strategy behind it. Well, I know that camps and events, it's not just the benefit of those who attend, and not only the benefit of the community, the recipient, but also those who kind of lead and serve at them. I loved what you were sharing about how you've seen these be catalysts for volunteers to actually take that step and to
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, maybe I do want to serve regularly. And I think that's a huge benefit. But I think they're also catalysts for current and future leaders to grow. So for you all, and I know you have a healthy pipeline of young leaders who come along and serve. So what advice would you have for a church kind of in building some leadership pipeline to not only serve at the camps, but then hopefully ideally to continue to serve at the church and be a part of the ministry?
Well, we started a program with this very concern in mind, Scott, at our camps that I think would could help churches, whether they're working with us or on their own. Obviously, I think it's transferable, and we call it our student staffer program, and the basis of this program is to develop young leaders, ninth through 12th graders, giving them an opportunity to serve for 1 week when camp is in their community. Now, it's not open to everybody. They have to be recommended by their youth pastor or somebody, a minister on their church staff, and they are accepted into the program, and they serve alongside of our staff, kind of being mentored. Now, it's twofold. One, it's helping them understand ministry, how to share their faith, how to work with children. In our case, obviously, our camp is for kindergarten to eighth grade, so we're helping them work with that age group. And we're looking at it from that perspective. And then the second perspective is, how does this translate into your local church?
Mm.
How does it translate into your local church? Because two things will happen. One, whenever the unchurched family does show back up on a Sunday morning and our camp staff is gone, we're at the next location. That young second grader is going to be looking for somebody that was there the week of camp that they perceive to be cool, got it together, fun to be around.
Yeah.
And if they can connect with John, the 11th grader, now all of a sudden that camper's anxiety level about being at a new place goes way down. And
Yeah.
when that second grader's anxiety goes down, who else's goes down?
Yeah.
Mom and dad.
Yep.
Okay. Now we've helped John, the 11th grader, understand his role in serving in a local church, that God can actually use him or her to serve in their local church. And what we're hoping is that that's not going to end when camp's over or the week after camp, but that's going to continue throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Okay. And that pipeline for the local church of volunteers is going to just keep extending. Even when a student graduates from high school, goes to college, that they will be so in love with the ministry of the local church that they'll try to find a church that they can serve in, even when they're in college.
Yeah.
Now, we hope they'll come back and serve camp with us in the summer as well.
Yeah.
But man, we love it when they plug into the ministry of their local church, because the future of the local church, as we all know, stems on this generation being in love with the ministry, loving it, seeing God move in it. And so we want to do our part to help churches succeed in building their own pipeline of young leaders.
Yeah. Well, it's so important, because that's how kind of a legacy of serving the church begins, whether that's in ministry or just as a volunteer, high capacity volunteer for your life, but getting those early tastes as well, and being on the front lines, seeing God move, seeing God do something in a kid's or student's life can be so impactful and stick with you, all your days, really.
Well, I remember when I was a senior in high school, and the pastor of the church that I grew up in asked me if I would preach on a Sunday morning. And I'd never preached before, never put together a sermon, but I was asked to preach. And I began putting together my sermon. I talked with my dad about it, and we looked over together, and I preached the best 12-minute sermon I could preach as a
Yeah.
senior in high school. And that was instrumental for me.
Yeah.
I remember people afterwards saying, "Hey, one day you might be a good preacher one day," you know, and they were right in that. Maybe one day I will,
Yeah.
but it was like, oh, so God can actually use me, and even after dumb mistakes and you know. Being an 18-year-old knucklehead, that God could
Yep.
actually use someone like me to communicate um, His eternal message, His life changing message to people. And so we believe that if churches, and in our case in camp, if we can provide those young leaders an opportunity to serve in the church, that God would use it to get their attention too, and
Mhm.
help them realize they can be a vital part of a local church and helping the church meet new people.
Yeah. That's really powerful. Well, I would love if you could just share a little bit for churches listening, how they might go about finding more about about what you all do. So maybe some detail of, so here's kind of some of the more applicable what we come in and help with, and also how they could explore maybe hosting a Connect camp, having you all come in, being a part of kind of what they're doing.
Okay. There's two ways that a church, if they were interested in partnering with us in some way. One is to go to Connect Camp's website. If you go to the Connect Camp's website, you'll see a button that will say Host a Camp. And you can click on that button that says Host a Camp, and we'll send you information about what does that look like. There's also a place for you to make a reservation to come visit a camp. So for
Oh, cool.
some church leaders, they just may want to come visit and see if there's any transferable principles they can use at their camp or use in their ministry. That's fine. We want to help as many churches as we can.
Yeah.
We can't take camp everywhere. We want to help as many churches as we can. So you can come. We call it a VIP plan. Come be a VIP with us. It doesn't cost anything. It's free. Just come. You got to let us know where you're coming, though. So make a reservation to come to one of our camps. So that's one way. You can host a camp or visit one of our camps. The second way is you can go to our Connect Ministries website. Just Google Connect Ministries. And on there, we have a free quiz survey that you can take as a church leader. Doesn't cost you anything. And it will help analyze your strengths and weaknesses as a church on how well you're doing at meeting new people. There's several different levels of surveys that you may be interested in, but there's one that you can take right away, and there's a couple videos that are free you can look at as it identifies how your church is doing based around the 4 ingredients that we've developed, that churches that are healthy in meeting new people are doing these 4 things. And so this survey can help you analyze your strengths. We send out a report and all kind of fun things that help you with that. So those are 2 quick ways. Connect Camp's website, connect-ministries.com website, and you'll see some real practical ways that we could partner together to help you meet new
Yeah.
people.
That's awesome. Well, one thing we ask everybody on our podcast is this question. Again, our goal is empowering healthy churches. And so we like to hear from our guests, what is one essential component of a healthy church?
This is not going to surprise you, Scott. I think one healthy component for churches is to have a strategy.
Mm.
Um, Sometimes I talk to churches and I say, well, hey, what's y'all's church's strategy? And, it may be something like, hey, our strategy is to love God and love people. And that's unbelievable. That's an unbelievable mission. It's actually a commandment, but that's not really the strategy.
Yep.
And so what I've seen over these years is to have a clear plan. Can you execute a clear plan? And so we help churches with that. We
Cool.
know how to help churches with that, but I think it's just important that churches have a very clear strategy that everybody throughout the organization knows. And when we've seen when churches do that, they have incredible momentum in accomplishing the purpose of the church and reaching people with the message of Christ and seeing them grow in the likeness of Christ. And so we're real passionate about it, but I think without a real clear, we call it execute a clear plan. If you don't have a plan, you can't even execute it. So
Yeah.
we really feel like that's a extremely important part of being a healthy church.
Yep. I would agree. Um, well, I'd love to jump into just our last little section we
Mhm.
do. We call it our final five. These are rapid fire. And so we'll jump in the first one. Some of these are tough because it asks for one recommendation or something. But the first one is this. What's one book that you'd recommend to church leaders?
I recently read a book, finished it just the other day. It's called A Legacy That Lasts.
Mm,
It's written by Trudy Cathy White, the daughter of Truett Cathy, founder of Chick-fil-A.
yep.
And it is, if you're a family pastor leading a next gen ministry, even a senior pastor, I would recommend reading this book, A Legacy That Lasts, because I believe it can be very, very helpful for your whole church. I'm not
Mm,
kidding. For your whole church, as you're thinking about providing those resources for your parents. It was convicting. It was helpful, um, challenging. And as a parent of three, it's like, man, we missed it on that.
mm,
Can we rewind? Can we rewind and try that again? But
yeah.
I think it's a really great read, and I think you would find it very helpful as a local church leader.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, we'll make sure to link to that. All right. Next one. Last thing that you listen to, whether it's on Spotify, Apple Music, kind of wherever you listen to things.
Well, I shared with you guys earlier that I like to jog. Used to be run, but it's jog now.
Yeah.
And when I do, I listen to 80s music.
All right. What's your go-to 80s artist?
Well, this will catch you off guard a little bit. Probably 38 Special.
Okay. Right
38
on.
Special. I like 38 Special. They kind of help me run a little bit.
I love it. Yeah. Hey, when you're running like that, it's you got to find what helps that body just keep going, you know? And
Yeah.
we all have something that it's like this one keeps me going.
38 Special. And also, you got the King of Pop, Michael Jackson. Now, he'll get you going too a little bit. So, but I like 38 Special. Always have.
Yeah, that's great. What is your favorite piece of technology?
I'm a baseball, softball junkie. And so this is not a complicated piece of technology, but it's a radar gun.
Ooh,
I
yep.
have a pocket radar gun. I keep it in my truck. I know some people probably think you're a weird guy, and I am. Uh, but when I go to watch a baseball game, my daughter plays college softball. I like to have my radar gun. I like to know how fast is that guy or that girl throwing.
Hey,
And so I just pull out my pocket and click the button, and I know.
hey, I like that. It's like you never know when you need to do a little bit of scouting or something, you
That's
know?
right.
Take some notes and know what the velocity is.
That's right.
Yep. What is a quote or advice that stuck with you over the years?
Well, my dad shared this particular Bible verse with me when I was a young boy, and it's continued to be a life verse for me. And it's do to others what you want them to do to you.
Mm,
Some translations, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. We know that as the golden rule, Luke 6:31.
yep.
I can't find a better piece of advice for today's time or for my whole life than that particular verse that Jesus shared with us. Hey, what if we all just treat other people the way we want to be treated?
Yeah.
Man, I can't get that. I can't get that off my mind, off my heart. I'm convicted when I don't do that, and I just know if I would just live my life as a leader by treating people the way that I want to be treated, man, Jesus had it right. It's
Yeah.
not easy, but I've not ever been able to shake it.
Yeah. That's good. All right. Well, what is one thing that you'd like to communicate to our audience of church leaders?
Well, I would simply say we would love the opportunity to serve you and help you because we believe that the mission of the local church is carrying the hope of the world to people who need it desperately. And so we are fulfilled in our ministry when we get to come and serve alongside of you, the local church leader, and helping you meet more people. And so if there's any way that we can do that, we would count it an honor and a privilege to be able to serve alongside of you as you go about telling your community and the world about Jesus Christ.
That's awesome. Well, Ken, I'd love if you could, I know you gave it kind of early in our conversation, but just one more time for people to find out more about Connect Ministries, get more information, follow along. Where can they do that best?
Yeah. Obviously, on our social channels, that'll be one way you can kind of keep up with what's happening with Connect Ministries on Instagram and Facebook. Also on our websites is probably one of the best ways that you can do that on connectcamps.com and connect-ministries.com are our two websites that have all that information. And obviously, you can contact me. Be happy to talk with any church leader anytime about what's happening in their community. And so I would count that a real honor.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate your time today. We're going to certainly link to social accounts, your website, and I would really encourage the church leaders listening to explore Connect Ministries, to look into Connect Camps, and to just really see the impact that can come from engaging your community, engaging people in a way that you can start to build those relationships and ultimately reach them. And so we appreciate your time, Ken. Appreciate you coming on. And thank you to those of you listening or watching for tuning in. Our goal, as always, is to empower healthy churches. And so we're going to continue to do our best to do that. Hopefully our conversation today has helped those of you listening in that effort. And so we'd encourage you, if it has, to share this with somebody, subscribe, like, follow along. We're going to have some more conversations. And we would love as well if you leave a review and let us know what you think. And thank you again for your time. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.
This episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast is brought to you by Ministry Brands, the largest provider of church technology software. Over 90,000 churches rely on Ministry Brands for their single platform solution that brings together all the digital tools a church needs. From online giving to websites to church management software and more, Ministry Brands is leading the way in simple-to-use, innovative solutions, all with the goal of empowering healthy churches. To learn more, visit ministrybrands.com.